Thank God it's Friday, Eastern Football League lovers, and welcome to another edition of the Friday Preview. It's everybody's favourite time of week where we can find out who's in and who's out across all 22 matches in the Eastern Football League. My name is Ben Warren-Smith. This afternoon we're out at EFL House with three, very well-learned gentlemen across the Eastern Football League. Let's start those introductions now. We just heard a slight little groan by a man who will be stepping up to special comments tomorrow on EFL Game Day. Damian Watson, good afternoon to you, mate.
Good afternoon to you too, BWS. I'm not exactly alerted, man. I wouldn't say that, but it's good to be with you here on this Friday afternoon. I'm looking forward to a big weekend of footy action in the EFL.
Well, a man who's quite often your wingman on BCG post-match is Sam Gastin, and he comes in to join us on a Friday afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Sam.
Thank you very much, BWS. Good to see you back in here on a Friday.
Yeah. It's been a long time, a few weeks between drinks, but always love chatting football with you guys, and there's some plenty of great matches to come over the weekend.
Certainly is, and I'm looking forward to plenty of big ones as well.
Man who's always looking forward to it because we probably see him across the Eastern Football League on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday
full
preview,
time.
Saturday. He basically is, and he doesn't earn a cent either, but maybe we could work on that. Braden Ingram, good afternoon to you, mate.
Yeah, good afternoon to you, BWS. It's the weekend. Let's get into it. Can't wait.
Oh, I can't wait either, mate. Let's start with Division 4, and it's straight on to you, Sam. A big game on the weekend for Ferntree Gully as they take on the Eastern Lions.
Yeah, it certainly is. Look, I don't think it'll be an exciting game that too many people outside these clubs...
A must-win, though, for the Ferntree Gully football side, and they need to probably put them away as well. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's a bit of a mismatch on paper, but Ferntree Gully, they've been really strong this year, 9-2, and obviously bounced back pretty strongly last week after what was probably a shock loss to Nuttawading the week before that. But last week, Hillside was the team that, it could have been a bit of a danger game for them. So to get the win and take control of that and get sort of back up there on the Division 4 ladder as well will be really impressive. But look, based on the scores, Ferntree Gully controlled most of the game last week, but kicked 9-22, so a little bit costly there, but had plenty of scoring shots and won 6-0 in the first quarter as well. They really jumped out of the blocks, but probably couldn't put the scores on the board there. They got the job done in the end, and Paul Hager was one of the reasons for that. He kicked 3, and that was his 5th time this year he's kicked 3, so he does like to put a bit of pressure on the scoreboard there. He's got 24 for the year. And they haven't lost this at home this year either, so down at Ferntree Gully Reserve is a very sort of formidable ground for oppositions to travel to, and I think Eastern Lions are going to have a bit of a tough time there this week. They had the bye last week, so they will probably come out with legs in the first quarter, but how long they can keep up with the Ferntree Gully side will probably be something that'll test them. I think Ferntree Gully, I should say, will get over the line pretty easily. And they've got a big capability of kicking big scores too, Ferntree Gully, so watch this space for tomorrow. The second game, Braden Ingram, we're going to take a look at, is out at the Canterbury Sports Ground with the Cobras taking on Coldstream, who in 7th position on the ladder. They've only had 4 wins to date, so can Canterbury notch their first win for the year?
It's their best chance, I think, at least in a little while for Canterbury. They're certainly struggling, went down by almost 100 points against Forest Hill. But then again, Coldstream, a bit of a shock loss, I'd say, to Nuttawading last week. Nuttawading a little bit up and about now, and Coldstream, they really didn't put up a fight. They were smashed by 60 points and really struggled. They only 8 goals for the match against a side that probably has struggled to kick a score early on in the season, and they're just struggling to kick goals. Liam Dowdy kicked a 5 for them a couple of weeks ago. Him not there makes things difficult, and that's a real issue for them. I think against Canterbury they should be able to get the win, but they're just so inconsistent, Coldstream. Look, this is a key game for them because they're still only a game out of the top 5. They can very much conceivably play finals, and they need a win and a big win just to get themselves back into form. But, even if they were to get the win, I just worry because their consistency has been so erratic this year. They really haven't had any form of consistency. As you said, only the 4 wins. Canterbury, there certainly hasn't been any consistency there. Look, they were probably competitive up to half-time last week, only down by 5 or 6 goals against Forest Hill, and again, they fell away in that second half. And Shelley Fulton kicked 3 for them last week. He's been important, was named their best on, but again, they're just struggling to kick a score, and they just don't have the players at the moment. I think it's going to be Coldstream, but, it might be a little bit closer than people think. About 5 goals to Coldstream.
Sylvan Damo in fourth spot on the ladder take on Forest Hill, who are in sixth. This is a big game for the Zebras, isn't it?
Oh, look, it's a crucial match in the context of the season for both clubs, really. I mean, Sylvan has probably consolidated their spot in the top four, but they would be among the group pushing for second spot. So a victory against a side that are 3 games below them at the moment is essential. And the Cats are also buoyed with confidence after a 3-goal away win over Surrey Park last week. Ben Straw here, David Bissell's a noted goal kicker Sean Toohey. They'll be players to watch after their prominent performances last week. And this is also a significant clash we must remember for the Zebras, who need to prevail in order to cement a position in the top 5. And with all due respect, they defeated an easy opponent last week in Canterbury to the tune of 89 points. And tomorrow's clash, though, that will provide us with a greater idea of Forest Hill's prospects this season. Players of the calibre of Nathan Jameo, who was best on ground with 6 majors last week, as well as Michael Cardamone and Dylan Chincotta, they'll need to perform at their peak if the Zebras are to sing the song with gusto post-match. But I feel that Sylvan can trump Forest Hill and convey their superiority with a win in excess of about 4 goals at Sylvan Recreation Reserve.
2 sides that'll need to be at their best, Sammy, that to take away the 4 points on the weekend are South Belgrave and Kilsyth. This is a juicy-looking clash, first versus third. Yeah,
it's a massive clash. As you said, both sides really up there in finals contention and sort of dominating on top of the ladder there. But how about South Belgrave? Still undefeated, 11 games into the season. They just seem to be doing everything right at the moment and got so many options there as well. Particularly in front of goal was one thing I wanted to have a look at. Lucas Appleby, he kicked 6 last week, and that's the second week in a row he's done that. He's kicked 26 for the year. Now, normally you would expect that to be almost the leading goal kicker at most clubs. He's sitting in third behind Lee Odermatt, who has 29, and Alex Backens with 35 as well. So they've got so many options down there and plenty to kick to. This one, I think, it's a bit of a danger game for them against Kilsyth, and it could be that game where they sort of lose that undefeated record so far, because Kilsyth, while they have lost 3 times this year, just the 3, they're 8-3 at the moment, they have been sort of pushing a little bit closer, and despite their loss to Ferntree Gully last week, they've been able to beat sides below them on the ladder, but losses to Sylvan, Ferntree Gully, they did lose to South Belgrave earlier in the year as well, so feel like they need to take a scalp if they are going to sort of go into the finals with confidence and be able to beat those quality sides. Speaking of goal kickers, and we mentioned them for South Belgrave before, Jay Sherlock, you hear his name all the time.
He's a gun.
55 goals is a fantastic achievement. 4 last week, he might almost be disappointed with that whole BWS. But, look, he's a star, and they need another big one from him if they're going to win this game. They've got a pretty favourable run home, but as I said, they need a scalp. I don't think it'll come this week. I think South Belgrave have a few too many options. They're a bit too strong all over the field, and at home they'll get the win.
The 5th and final game in Division 4, gentlemen, is over to you, Braden. It was going to be EFL's match of the day. Unfortunately, we couldn't head out to Surrey Park. We'll be going to South Croydon instead. But the Surrey Park Panthers take on the Park Orchard Sharks tomorrow in what should be a very interesting affair.
Yeah, it's a juicy one indeed, BWS. Surrey Park, they're right in it. They've only played the 10 games compared to most other teams that have played the 11, so they've got that little advantage, but this is a crucial game. They're 5th on the ladder, Park Orchards are 8th, but Park Orchards only sit a game behind. So a win here would actually extend them 2 games in front and a game in hand as well. So they really need the win. They were all right last week. They just went down to Sylvan by 18 points. It was a competitive game. They were just in it at 3/4 time, but Sylvan sort of managed to get over the line in the end. They've been strong all season, though, Surrey Park. This is their most competitive we've seen in 5 or 6 years. Some of the players, Lukey Conker's been a revelation in there, and players like that have been key for them. I think this one is just going to be incredibly tight. At the moment, I'm leaning towards Surrey Park just because home ground advantage. They've been a little bit down, but at the same time, Park Orchards, they've got the 4 wins. They're right in it as well. And some players for them have stood out. Against South Belgrave last week, only down by 21 points. Again, they've been able to push sides above them that maybe in the past we certainly wouldn't have expected them. Adam Gamble, he's been good, kick 4 last week. But the 2 key players for me, Liam Bahagia and Julian Battistella, they're really important players for Park Orchards. When they're going, they really get up and about. They had a good game last week and they need to produce this performance again. As I said, look, I think it's going to be It's going to be Surrey Park at home, just a little advantage, but you could really flip a coin on this one.
Well, you certainly could, and there's a bit of revenge maybe about the Park Orchards Football Club, because if we'll remember in round one it was this year that it was Surrey Park who broke their duck against the Sharks.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're going to be keen for it, because it's not, you don't really want a team that's lost 67 times in a row to be the one who beats you, to get that first win in a while. So they're going to be keen, and it's not just revenge though. They've got a real chance to still fight for that fifth position. It's really sitting there. Surrey Park haven't been able to put sides away, so it's there for Park Orchards if they want it.
Looking forward to the result of that one. And the other 4 matches in Division 4. Hope your team wins as you go local for your football tomorrow afternoon. As we turn our attention to Division 3, and of course, the Friday preview is always brought to you by Inside Football, the must-read for the fair dinkum footy fan. I hope you hadn't forgotten, because we certainly had it. Division 3 time, Damo. Let's start out at Jubilee Park. We head with the Redbacks taking on the Bloods.
Oh, that's right. This should be an interesting encounter too, BWS. I feel, though, that the Redbacks will have a lot more to play for and realise that there'll be so much at stake tomorrow. And a victory for Ringwood against a lowly opponent is essential to revive their dying finals hopes, it has to be said. Look, Ringwood were gallant last week against a formidable opponent in Doncaster. Trent Farmer is an enigma when he is in form, and that was vindicated with a 5-goal performance last week. And, of course, he kicked that goal after the siren a couple of weeks ago. It would be handy for the Redbacks if he were to maintain this input tomorrow. As for the Bloods, their main concern would be to avoid relegation and strive to display a 4-quarter performance. I thought they were disappointing in their 87-point defeat last week at the hands of Wantirna South, despite leading at quarter time as well. And Luke Brewis and Michael Morello, they were serviceable players for Warrandyte last week, and they'll have to exert their influence on the game for a victory tomorrow. However, I think there is greater incentive for Ringwood to win tomorrow, and I feel that they'll complete this task by at least 6 goals BWS at Jubilee Park.
6 goals, you reckon, Damo?
Yes.
That's not a huge margin.
Well, no, but Warrandyte, of course, they have a bit to play for as well, trying to avoid relegation.
They certainly do, because a team that they'll be going up against in that relegation battle, I should say, mate, is the Whitehorse Pioneers. And, Sam, they take on the Doncaster Football Club tomorrow, which is the top versus bottom battle.
Yeah, definitely. And I think last week was probably back to reality a little bit for Whitehorse. After their big win 2 weeks ago, obviously they came up against Baronia and got done by 98 points. So, look, I hope not as a bit of a Whitehorse fan, but I think there might be a similar sort of margin against Doncaster this week. And look, things didn't get much better for Whitehorse either last weekend. They lost one of their young guns. Michael McDougall snapped his collarbone and will probably miss the rest of the year. He's played most games this year off a winger in the midfield, so he's one of those young players that has really been performing quite well, and they're going to miss him too. One of the other young guys, Joel Dalgleish, has been named best player for Whitehorse the last 2 weeks. So I think the upside for Whitehorse is, while they aren't winning a lot of games, they are playing the young kids and getting a bit of experience into them as well. So while we might not see it this year, they will be up and coming in the next couple of years, hopefully, if they can maintain all those guys. As for Doncaster, well, it's probably a completely different story. They're in a 3-way battle for that top spot with Mitcham and Wantirna South, and they're really finding some good form. 10-2 is, can never really go wrong with that, and they're getting new players coming up as well. I probably thought earlier in the year, a lot of people were saying they were a bit Nathan Thompson conscious, and now he's not playing as much football as he did earlier in the year. They do have some new guys that have stepped up. James Applefoot is one of them. He has 27 goals for the year, and Matt Carlson as well has 12. He's kicked 9 in the past 3, including 5 last weekend. So they were made to work hard in that game against Ringwood, who they trailed at every break in the game, but eventually won by 11 points. So they'll be expecting another good performance this weekend against Whitehorse, and it should be an interesting one.
It certainly should be, mate. And Benny McGarnis up back, leading the way as he has done so for so many years, and putting his hand up for, no doubt, possibly a position in the Division 3 team of that year. Let's turn it to the Battle of the Hawks, shall we, Braden Ingram, with Glen Waverley taking on Baronia tomorrow out at Central Reserve.
BWS, I fear this one isn't going to be much of a battle. The only thing that might keep Glen Waverley in it, the Central Reserve, it certainly favours them. But Baronia, they are just swooping on other teams, whereas I think the Glen Waverley Hawks, they're in a nosedive. They're really struggling at the moment. They can't seem to really have anything fall in their favour. But Baronia, they are the exact opposite. They are just flying. They smashed the Basin a couple of weeks ago. They were sensational against them. The whole game they were solid, and after three-quarter time they come out and just put the base into the sword. Then last week, the entire game, they probably played 4 quarters against Whitehorse, a 98-point victory. Lockie Watson, I like this young man. He kicked 4 against the Basin, 3 of which in the final quarter, and they were pretty neat goals as well. And he kicked another 4 against Whitehorse. He's a bit of a find for them. Really like how he's going about his business. And, we know they're great players. Alan, Grice, the captain, that's just on fire at the moment, and I like the way they're going. I mean, they've
timing their year to perfection, some might nearly say.
Exactly. I mean, there was probably, I think, a bit of doubt from us in the media team and maybe a bit around the EFL team earlier in the season. I think, I think there may have been some others that thought, again, they're going to be the bridesmaid again. They've just can't seem to string it together, and I think that's not the case now. I mean, they've only lost the 3 games, and they're going really strong. They're now 2 games clear of the Basin in 5th, and only a game behind Doncaster, Wantirna South, and Mitcham, and have a very nice percentage, pretty much on par with those 3 teams above them. So they are in this up to their necks. They're going along very nicely. And I mentioned they've got plenty of good players, whereas the Glen Waverley Hawks, they're really struggling. We've spoken, I'm not going to dwell on it, we've spoken about it as a party. He's going, and he's their leading goal kicker. I mean, I think he's still in the top 10 of the goal kickers in Divi 3, so that's an issue. And just a point, I mean, Baronia don't have anyone in the top 10 goal kickers for Division 3, so it shows they're getting a really good spread and still able to kick a good score. And look, this one, it could get pretty messy. I mean, if Baronia are on their game like they were against Whitehorse, they should be able to get, I reckon, at least a 10-goal victory. And Glen Waverley need to be careful. I need to mention they're not that far away from relegation. They're only a game above Whitehorse Pioneers, and they're equal in games in Warrandyte with the 2 wins. So there's an issue there, and their percentage is not much better than the Whitehorse Pioneers. So they need to make sure they don't get flogged, but they might have trouble preventing that. So going to be a big win to Baronia.
The out-of-form Templestowe Football Club Damo take on the equal top of the table Mitcham Tigers tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right, and this is a vital game too. On one hand, there is that log jam in the top rung of the Division 3 ladder, and it's integral that Mitcham do not fall off the pace. On the other, Templestowe, they really do require a victory to keep their faint finals hopes alive, and as you mentioned, BWS, the Dockers haven't been in the greatest of form. I actually think this will be a difficult match to predict. I mean, Mitcham would have been injected with confidence after a 32-point victory over a relatively strong side in the Basin, particularly after facing a deficit of 5 goals effectively at quarter time. And the 2 keys for the Tigers tomorrow linger obviously in the forward line with their potent goal kickers in Steve Pym and Johnny Pignataro, who amassed a total of 7 goals last week. They've both been in superlative form. The Dockers defenders will undoubtedly have their work cut out tomorrow afternoon, curbing the scoring rate. And speaking of Templestowe, there would have been a sense of unmitigated disappointment and anger after an upset 19-point loss at the hands of Chirnside Park last week, and their defenders allowed Luke Forsyth to convert 6 goals, which is an aspect of their game that they must rectify this week. I think that Simon Grass's presence up forward and a sense of urgency and anger after last week's loss will drive Templestowe tomorrow. However, I predict Mitcham to prevail in a tight climax, actually, by just 3 points at Templestowe Reserve.
We've got one of those feelings about this one, Damo.
I just think so. I think there's a sense of urgency now for Templestowe, and they realise it could be last chance saloon.
Arguably match of the round, Sam, tomorrow is the Basin taking on Wantirna South. I really like the look of this one.
Yeah, definitely. It's 2nd versus 4th in this one, and it is going to be a really interesting clash out there at Batterham Reserve. Wantirna South, we'll look at them first. They've extended their winning streak out to 5 games in a row now, and they are really looking good and sort of playing some good footy at the right time of the season as well. Last week was an example of that. In a game, probably they always would have been confident against Warrandyte there. They won by 87 points in the end. They kicked 20 goals 20, so they put plenty of scoreboard pressure on and also had 12 individual goal scorers. So half their team got on the board, and that's something that Matt Clark, I think, would have been really happy with there. Brad Hutchinson was the leader with 4, and he's kicked 16 this year, as well as being in the best 8 times. So he's obviously rated down there and throughout the league as well, and he's doing plenty of good things. As for the Basin, well, they've probably been slipping a little bit after what was really a fantastic start from the season. And look, I think it was always going to be a hard transition up from Division 4, and probably as the season goes on, it's going to get tougher for them as well, as the other teams sort of, figure out what they're all about and work out how to play them a little bit better. It's going to be a real challenge for Wantirna South. Look, they're still sitting at 7 and 5, so they are capable of beating these good teams, but it will be tough against the Wantirna South side that is really shaping as one of the premier contenders in Division 3. And for the Basin, back on them. Max Kruger back is so handy to have. He's played a couple of games, and I think as he keeps playing, he's just going to get more and more involved as well, and start really improving and having a massive impact on those games. I'm not too sure about Andy Coltrera, but he's been missing for the last couple of weeks. He's their leading goal kicker, so the sooner the better to get him back out there. It'll really make a big impact. Look, I think Wanturna South will be the favourites in this one. At Batterham Reserves makes it a little bit more interesting for mine because it is a long road trip and the Basin are very hard to beat out there, so it'll be an interesting one.
Big chance for the Bears to make a statement, but Wanturna South cannot let this game slip, and I can't see that happening. Let's have a look at the 6th game in Division 3 tomorrow, Braden. It is the Chirnside Park Football Club who have hit a little bit of recent form, and they take on another side who are in form, the Heathmont Jets. They're knocking on the door for the final 5.
If ever there was a crunch game for the Heathmont Footy Club, this is it. This is huge. They need to win this game. They're equal on games 1 with 7 with the Basin. They've got 2 games clear of the next team in Ringwood and Templestowe who are on 5 wins. So they're sitting comfortable there. But arguably it's between the Basin and the Heathmont at the moment for that 5th spot. And the thing about Heathmont at the moment is their percentage. It sits at 77 compared to the Basin's 105. That's a real issue for me. Heathmont are the 3rd worst for points scored in the competition. They've struggled to kick scores this year. And against Cherney, who kicked 100 on the weekend, that could be interesting. Cherney, I think maybe a bit of a surprise to get up over Tempe on the weekend. Although Tempe have been struggling, 200-point losses, I think we might have thought, Templestowe will bounce back here. But to Chirnside's credit, they really stood up. Luke Forsyth kicked 6, Scotty Hamill kicked 3. So they had players they really needed get up and about, and a really, really needed win. I mean, they're sitting on only the 4 wins, and it's just made sure that they're not going to get relegated, giving them plenty of space to continue to develop some players. So good for them. And home game this week, you think maybe gives them a chance, but I think Heathmont, look, they're on a roll. Beat Glen Waverley, maybe not as convincingly as one would have hoped last week, only 31 points, but doing what they have to do. Rob Savoury kicked 6, so he's going along very nicely. Kieran O'Driscoll, Sverns, the players we expect to see, and we do see in there very often, they're in there again, so that's certainly what they need. But look, Heathmont are going to win this one. It's just the big picture. The Basin have got Wanturna South at home, as we just mentioned, and with Wanturna South being the favourites, Heathmont need to take advantage of this opportunity and make sure they leapfrog the Basin, because their percentage is certainly much worse, but this is their opportunity to at least get in front of them and get inside that top 5.
Massive opportunity for the Jets to make a statement tomorrow. This is a game that arguably over recent seasons that they would drop in a game that they would expect to win away from home. Gentlemen, that's the way that we saw it in Division 3 across the 6 games. Hope your team wins tomorrow afternoon as you go local for your football. But it's Division 2 time, and of course Division 2 is brought to you by Inside Football. The must-read Damian Watson for the fair dinkum footy fan. You love it, don't you?
I do. I read it every week religiously.
And I bet you love the clash that's going to happen out tomorrow at Mulgrave with the Lions taking on the Blues.
That's right. And look, while these sides are in contrasting positions on the Division 2 table, I think that the result may be a little closer than one would perceive on paper. The Mulgrave group will feel reinvigorated after last week's account of Domvale, who have disappeared off the radar, it must be said. The most promising facet of the Lions' 10-point victory, however, was the fact that they displayed a consistent 4-quarter effort and remained composed until the final siren as well. But on the other side of the spectrum, I think that the Croydon unit would be kicking themselves up the proverbial after squandering a 28-point lead to lose in excess of 5 goals to the top of the table Montrose, and the Blues cannot afford a major second-half fade-out tomorrow, and I feel with the imposing influences of Andrew Hughes and Braden Wiener, who have been in good recent form, Croydon can avoid a similar embarrassment, but only by 3 goals out at Mulgrave Reserve.
North Ringwood are a side that are in red-hot form, aren't they, Sam? And they take on the Waverley Blues, who over recent weeks have just fallen away a touch.
Yeah, definitely. Look, the earlier game between these two teams in round 5 threw up a bit of an interesting result with Waverley Blues getting the win there, and that was North Ringwood's first loss for the year. So I'm not sure if they can do it again this week, but it'll definitely give both teams something to play for. Waverley Blues with a bit of confidence against this side, and North Ringwood obviously after a bit of revenge. So look, I think North have only lost 2 games since that and sort of continue to hold their own. Well, not only hold their own in Division 2, but sort of present themselves as a real contender. They've had to overcome some big games in the last couple of weeks, and Doncaster East last week was a real challenge, and they got over the line by 25 points in that one, and from all reports really put in a 4-quarter performance and won that game. Look, seen a lot of North Ringwood and I've seen a lot of their scores, and it always seems to be the same names that stand out to me. Anthony Sharp was again best on ground last week. Only a small man, as I've said before, but continues to kick goals. He kicked 3. When you've got guys like that, and James Dean as well, who kicked 3 as well, he wasn't in the best, but our man Ray Baird said he was very influential in that one. So when you've got guys like that surrounding Tom Hill, who's kicked 53 for the year and been the real target down there, there's plenty of attacking pressure that's going to scare a lot of teams, I think. And Waverley Blues, while they might not be one of them, they've been up and down this year, and I think 5 and 7 probably does reflect their season and how they've played. They'll rate themselves as a chance in this one. They have beaten good sides. They beat Croydon as well earlier on in the year. So, look, they'll be there and abouts, but I think the loss to Bayswater last week at Bayswater would have been something they'd been really disappointed in. Obviously, in Brett Davison's 500th game as coach as well, you would have expected them to come out firing there, but didn't get the job done there, unfortunately. Look, they're now 3 games out of the top 4, so I think this is sort of do or die for them. If they win this week, possibly keep their season alive, but it is going to be tough, and they're going to have to do plenty right if they are going to sort of contend at the end of the year. I think North Ringwood will win this one.
Bayswater silenced a few doubters last weekend. Braden Ingram with a convincing win over the Waverley Blues. Tomorrow they head to Heights Reserve to take on Muralbark, who didn't just... we won't say they fell over the line last week. We'll call it they did what they had to do to get the 4 points.
Yeah, look, Bayswater, 2 wins on the trot now. Certainly haven't seen that for a while. They really needed that. Daniel Rajab told us on AFL TV that, that's something that's been missing. They haven't been able to string 2 games together all year. So they were really impressed, I think really happy at least, to really put the Waverley Blues to the sword last week. And, well, Muralbark, they're really an enigma. I mean, they came out a couple of weeks ago. We were surprised, they were shocked even. They beat Montrose by a point, and they came out, would have been pumped up, fired up. Then they lose to North Ringwood, who admittedly are a good side, but Muralbark just can't seem to match it. I mean, they went down by 20 points in that, and they can't seem to really consistently beat the good sides. We saw it, I think, a bit last year as well. They get 1 win and they get smashed by Montrose further on down the season. So, they're a bit confusing. I think at home, look, it's certainly going to favour Muralbark. As you said, they did what they had to against Upper Ferntree Gully. 16-point lead, but it's really not that convincing because Upper Ferntree Gully only have the 2 wins. They're the bottom side. Muralbark are 4th, really fighting for that 3rd spot and even that 2nd spot as well. So they're certainly in it, but Muralbark are going along doing what they have to, at least at the moment. Good win against Montrose. North Ringwood, that's a setback, but they can get back up and about. Upper Ferntree Gully win got them going again, and now this one, Bayswater. They need to keep that consistency rolling on. Polkinghorn's been good. We see him all the time. Trent Giorgio. So, look, the players you expect to do well have certainly got them all fired up, but just want to see a bit more of a convincing performance. Bayswater probably still not going along as well as they would like to. The 2 wins have been good, but it hasn't been a good season for them. Players I want to outline for them: Wayne McInerney. He's been sensational for them. He's the little small man. He's kicked 31 for the season and been strong for them up forward.
Kicked 5 goals, I think, last week.
That's right. Yeah, so I think he was second best on to Daniel Rajab. So. He's been really strong for them down forward. I mean, they're still missing that tall forward, but in that absence, he's been that strong in that crumbing position. But look, in terms of this game, Muralbark, look, I think they'll get it. They'll get it pretty comfortably in the end. There's just that hesitation and that bit of doubt because of the way they've maybe dropped a couple of these games in the past, but they shouldn't have any trouble disposing of Bayswater.
Well, you created this huge cloud over the Muralbark Football Club, and then you've said right at the end there, that they'll do it pretty comfortably. Yeah,
look, I've created a huge cloud because, I mean, there's games that don't suggest this consistency, but the way Bayswater have been playing, I mean, they've had those 2 wins, but for me, before that, we've seen this in the past. We've seen them get a couple of wins on the trot, and against these top sides, then they seem to capitulate. So, look, Muralbark, they got that win on the weekend, and they'll get their mojo back.
You stand on your dig. I like that. I appreciate that. Montrose taking on Doncaster East tomorrow. Damian, Watson. You'd expect this to be bread and butter for the D's?
Well, you would have thought so, but this does shape as an intriguing clash out at Montrose Recreation Reserve, with 2 teams pitted against each other, hoping to make their mark as finals contenders, perhaps from Doncaster East perspective, but Montrose really is continuing on their merry way, and they boast a plethora of avenues to goal, which is a major asset to any side. And this was exemplified last week when the Demons staged a second half revival to defeat an intimidating Croydon outfit. However, I'm sure playing coach Brett Johnson would be more satisfied with a consistent effort throughout the whole match tomorrow, and players such as Matt Petrarca with 5 goals last week and Dylan Rickard, they're figures that need to be quelled by Doncaster East for for a victory tomorrow. As for the Lions, they've managed to assert themselves perhaps as a force to be reckoned with. However, every game is important in the run home, and who better than Montrose to provide a yardstick as to how far Donny East can go in 2013. The side would be disappointed, though, following their gallant 25-point loss to North Ringwood, as they were within striking distance, really, until the last break. Daniel Gordon, Bill Morrison and the live wire Carl Peterson are players I expect to have an impact for the Lions tomorrow. However, I think Montrose will convey greater poise and polish to prevail by 5 goals in front of their home crowd tomorrow.
The fifth and final game, Sam, is Donvale taking on Upper Ferntree Gully. All of a sudden, this game has a lot of interest about it.
Yeah, it's turned out to be a big one, hasn't it? And probably not one that we would have expected a couple of weeks ago to be in a really important clash. Donvale have really fallen. They've gone from being probably almost a finals hope at the start of the year. They're now in relegation territory and only sit one spot above the bottom-placed Upper Ferntree Gully on the ladder. So they are 2 games clear, but this really is a massive game to see who will be staying up in Division 2 and who will be dropping down to Division 3 next year. You would think Donvale will have the better side on paper. They do have a lot of strong players out there and guys that I think on their day really can beat probably a lot of teams. But the thing with Donvale is you can say that almost every week, and they haven't been winning. They've lost 6 straight. So you probably need to start asking some questions of how is Graham Cuff getting the best out of his players and what's going on down there. But look, I think if they play well, they will beat Upper Ferntree Gully pretty easily. You would have thought the same thing against Mulgrave possibly last week, though, a game that they should have won. They were behind all day. They almost did get in front at the end there with Nick Murphy kicking 4 goals, a couple of late ones. Apparently took a big hanger as well, which I've heard he was very happy with. So I think if they do all the right things, they will beat Upper. But Upper Ferntree Gully, they'll see themselves as a real chance here and a massive opportunity to sniff that 3rd win of the year. They're probably not playing like a team that has only had the 2 wins for the year of late. Last week they led at 3/4 time before losing, unfortunately. But David Eddy was one that stood out to me as impressive again. He's been named their best player 2 weeks in a row. So he's getting plenty of good contributions there. Harrison Taylor and Jared Dirksen were 2 others that were very impressive last weekend. So if they can get good performances out of those guys and some of their better players as well, they will probably have a chance in this one. But I think Donvale at home, they desperately need a win after 6 losses in a row, and I think they'll get it this week.
Let's hope that everybody has a terrific day as they go local for their football across the 5 Division 2 great matches tomorrow. But gentlemen, it's time for the Premier Division, Division 1. That's what we've all been waiting for, and like all divisions, it is brought to you by Inside Football, the must-read for the fair dinkum footy fan. Braden, mate, we're going to start it out at East Ringwood at the Maroondah Sports Club with the Roos taking on the red-hot Balwyn Tigers.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's going to save East Ringwood on the weekend is if the ground floods or they leave the sprinklers on overnight and the game gets called off because, Balwyn... this isn't necessarily a criticism completely on East Ringwood. Obviously, their season hasn't been great, but when you look at the way Balwyn have treated their opponents, pretty much all of them with contempt this year. I mean, they treated Vermont, the grand final runners-up to them last year, with just absolute utter contempt on the weekend. They treated them like garbage and really put them out on the curbside and tore them a new one. I mean, they were sensational on the weekend. I mean, I'll admit, Vermont certainly weren't at their best, but Balwyn were. I mean, they were scary, I think you could say, BWS, and 12 wins, no losses. They're going along very nicely. And as I said, even the sides that aren't doing as well, they just destroy them. I mean, they're not like maybe a Noble Parker and Norwood in that they maybe don't absolutely smash sides. They beat them comprehensively. They play their best football all the time. And we saw that on the weekend. Jeff Goebbels, he kicked 7. He was sensational. And what's so good about the Balwyn forward line is, Luke Barker still bobbed up with 2, as did Blake Broadhurst. But if Goebbels doesn't kick 7, then Barker will, or someone else will. Someone else will pop up, and the other 2 key forwards or big forwards, they will play more of a supporting role. They'll get the ball up there. They'll take another key defender. So that's just the way that Balwyn forward line works and has been sensational. East Ringwood, well, they've had pretty much a dog of a year. They're really struggling. Only 6 goals against Norwood last week, and as I said, just struggling to kick a score. That 60 points, 70 points down against Norwood, and they're just struggling. Matt Blaha, he's been good for them, but it was best on last week against Norwood. But at the moment, There's no reason to go past Baldwin BWS.
No, you wouldn't think so, would you? But I'm pretty sure Bernie Dunedin will be directing the side to make sure that they're competitive for the afternoon and to really take notice and take stock of what a really good football side that Baldwin is. So we look forward to the result of that game. We look forward to discussing, Damo, the next match. East Burwood taking on Blackburn, a bit of a local rivalry between these two sides over recent years.
And that could come into play tomorrow as well. And you just have to look at the level of incentive to realise the importance of this clash for both sides. I mean, Blackburn scored an important victory last week over Scoresby to leapfrog them on the ladder, and they're currently 2 games outside the top 5, and they really did rectify their run of losses of late. Conversely, East Burwood is languishing on the bottom of the ladder, and sadly I don't think they can avoid relegation, but a victory tomorrow can overturn their fortunes, and the Rams probably had the better of Knox for the first 3 quarters last week before fading in the final stanza, but if they can continue to display competitive football tomorrow through the likes of Jaden Dooman and Alex Mariani standing tall, they can really rattle the Panthers' cage. Blackburn did break the drought last week, and they'll be hoping that this sense of winning momentum can last in the remaining rounds of the home and away season. Ben Fraser will be an important cog up forward for the Panthers tomorrow, while Ryan Toohey and Tyler Faulkner will be hoping to continue their promising form. However, I think that the Rams have improved immeasurably in the last few weeks, and I think they can cause an upset by 10 points on their home turf at East Burwood Reserve tomorrow.
The side that needs to win tomorrow to keep their season still alive. And we wouldn't say they're hanging on by a thread, but tomorrow is a must-win game. The Knox Football Club heading out to Scoresby.
Yeah, definitely, and probably a really close game as well. Only one win separates these two teams. Obviously, Scoresby with 4 wins for the year and Knox with 5. But look, I think probably not much but pride on the line in this one with both teams, I would say, struggling so far through this year. And Scoresby, as Damo just mentioned, they were 21-point loss to Blackburn last week, and I thought they were pretty disappointing in a game that they probably needed to win to sort of keep their season a little bit alive. One standout for them was Jared Hicks, who kicked 6 goals. That's the second week in a row he's snagged 6, so adding to the total of 27 for the year, he's been very influential. And watching a couple of those Van Reenen boys last week, they are very big fellas, and I wouldn't be going anywhere near them on the football field, but Luke was in the best last week, and they're really formidable opponents and real danger, X factors, I guess, for the Scoresby side. So if they can get up and running, they'll be looking really good against the Knox side that, look, 12 rounds in, and I still don't know a lot about the Knox Football Club. They throw up some interesting results. They win some games that they probably should win and don't do much else for mine. And last week was probably a factor of that. They did what they needed to do against East Burwood. They won by 25 points, but they didn't really stand out, and they didn't, I guess, put a big score on the board or really put on that convincing win that I think they really needed. Ben Healy was best on ground. He was very impressive, and some guys that are really strong every week and ultra consistent in Luke Williams and Sam Jeffrey as well. They get contributions out of those guys every week, and I think that'll continue as the season goes on. Look, Knox won by 3 points in a low-scoring clash back in round 3 when these two sides met. I think it could be reversed this week. I think Scoresby at home might win in what I reckon will be a very close one.
Braden, Vermont versus Noble Park. It wets the whistle just mentioning those two names. We're calling them the challengers now, aren't we, really?
Yeah, indeed we are. I mean, especially after that Bourne performance on the weekend. But both these teams, I still have a real shot. I mean, Noble Park absolutely matched it with Bourne on Queen's birthday, and what was a scrappy affair. Bourne got the chocolates in the end, and look, we've seen Vermont, they can play incredibly good football. I think at the moment, a couple of things making it difficult. I mean, Justin Van Unen, he can still kick goals, was very well held on the weekend against Bourne, only kicked the one. Look, the issue's been that with Ash Froud out, he would usually draw another defender, so the pressure and the men all go to Van Unen, and they put pressure on him, and I think that was one of the reasons why he was stopped on the weekend. So
they had no structure going forward on the weekend at all.
No, they didn't.
They were just bamboozled, basically.
There was a lot of long bombing, and I mean, I think Ben Waterworth mentioned during the telecast that Noble Park would just be keen to get their hands on the video, and I'm sure they've had a pretty good look at it over the weekend. And
in saying that, I would say that Vermont themselves have had a very good look at the video during the week as well, because they'll pretty much the 22 players were almost defeated. Take away a couple of players like Mendes and Mullett and maybe Schneider as well. But otherwise, I'm pretty sure they will have gone back and done a fair bit of homework themselves and seen where they fell down.
Even Mullett and Schneider, I mean, they won the ball, but they were just, I mean, they couldn't use the ball effectively. The pressure was that high. So, yeah, absolutely agree with you. I mean, both teams will have had a real solid look at this. Noble Park will say, yeah, this is what we can do, but I can guarantee you Vermont will not come out and play like they did last week. I think Noble Park are going to get the win, and it's going to be a tight tussle. Vermont will not want to produce what happened last week, and Noble Park, look, I think, again, they're going under the radar, especially after that loss to Bourne. They've just sort of coasted through, and now they sort of bob back up, especially if they can beat Vermont, then they become the real challengers. And look, Shane Allen, he's been really strong for Noble Park this year. Georgie Angelopoulos, we love him. He's a bit of a pest, but I tell you what, he does a job. He's been strong for them all year, and Brad Scalzo as well. So they've just got plenty of names, both these sides. Look, the captain, Ryan Mullett, he's not going to accept his performance last week. As we said, had won the ball but didn't use it that effectively. So I've always stuck with Noble Park. I've always said I think they're going to play Bourne in the grand final, and I'm going to stay with that.
Two sides will be looking forward to their battle out at Mullen Reserve, the Norwood Football Club taking on Lilydale.
And you speak of mouth-watering clashes, BWS. This is probably another one in Division 1. Norwood is probably in the box seat, though, based purely on form and as well as the home ground advantage. They were sensational last week, too, in their comprehensive defeat of East Ringwood to the tune of 64 points. Matt McCormick is a man that will stand out for the Norsemen tomorrow, following a best-on-ground performance, complete with 6 goals last week. Meanwhile, the Falcons are desperately clinging to that 5th spot, and the win tomorrow will be imperative to maintaining that. The Lilydale hierarchy would have been immensely dissatisfied with that 26-point loss to South Croydon last week, a team right on their hammer on the Division 1 table. However, through the aid of players such as James Roach and Jake Taylor, an upset win for Lilydale over a top 4 side tomorrow would atone for that performance. However, I think that Norwood can place a significant dent on the Falcons' pursuit of 5th spot with a 5-goal victory at Mullen Reserve tomorrow.
And Stuart Hill coming back into the side. He is a star, so a good addition for the Norsemen. The 6th and final game across the Eastern Football League in Division 1 tomorrow, Sam, is EFL's match of the day out at Cheon Park with South Croydon taking on Rowville. A battle for 5th position. This is going to be a ripper.
It certainly will, and a good game to finish the Friday preview on, because it's going to be a really exciting contest there, and I'm a bit jealous of all you guys going out to see it tomorrow, because I think it will be a
What will you be doing tomorrow, mate?
Game. I'm going to be selling shoes tomorrow, just a 9 to 5. But and like I said, I'm a bit jealous of you guys. So.
Oh, well, that's fair enough too. We'll be thinking of you.
Thank you very much. Look, well, South Croydon, they've really emerged in recent weeks, and now they find themselves as a real contender for that 5th spot. They've I wouldn't say come from nowhere, but probably after a bit of a slow start to the season, they've really strung some games together. And a win over Lilydale in Lilydale is a massive achievement, and one that's going to give them a lot of confidence as well to take into this one. Grattan Stevens, I should say, the big full forward, didn't add a goal last week, but he was named in the best players and serviced really well by James Crowell, who kicked 4, has 21 for the year. And they've got a few targets down there that they can look to. So if one's probably not firing as well as the other, they can sort of pick and choose a little bit, which is a good problem to have. As for Rowville, look, they win here and it's really tied up for that 5th spot, depending on some other results. Obviously, a Knox win, a Lilydale loss, and all of a sudden you've got four or five teams sitting in that 5th spot, and it's going to be really interesting as the season goes on. Rowville were beaten by Noble Park by 29 points last week in what was a pretty, well, they wouldn't never be happy with a loss, but getting close to a quality team like Noble Park, 29 points, isn't a bad achievement, and it's something that I think they can improve on and gain a bit of confidence from that and take into this game. Both sides are really, really even for me, and I think this is a massive game to see who will sort of take that edge going into the final stages of the year. I think Rowville do have the easier run home. After this match, they don't play anyone above them on the ladder, whereas South Croydon have Balwyn and Norwood to contend with later on in the year. So depending on how this one goes, I think it'll go a long way to sort of determining the final results in the Division 1 ladder. And I'm going to tip. Who am I going to tip? I'm going to go with South Croydon, I think.
Well, of course, as I've already mentioned, tomorrow's game at South Croydon taking on Rowville is EFL Match of the Day on 98.1 Radio Eastern, and, of course, streaming live on efl.org.au. Gentlemen, it's been a fantastic afternoon's chat of football, you might say. Damo, it's always a pleasure for you to talk footy with your good self.
Oh, thanks for having me, BWS. I'll take any work that I can get.
And we'll put you straight onto that volunteer work tomorrow with some special comments in the caravan, mate.
Yeah, certainly looking forward to it, though.
Absolutely. And Sam Gastin, mate, great to have you come in and have a chat about some football tomorrow. Well, after you said you're going to be selling some shoes, we might have to start calling you Al Bundy, I think, on the EFL media team, mate. But have a good day, and we're looking forward to having you back on the airwaves real soon.
Yes, I'll be there in spirit tomorrow, surely.
And Braden Ingram, my wingman tomorrow. We're looking forward to it, aren't we, mate? Calling the big clash, the Doggies taking on the Hawks. Should be a ripper.
Yeah, feel a bit privileged to be calling Division 1 footy with you, BWS, so I can't wait for it tomorrow. Let's get into it.
Stepping up to the big plate. EFL Sunday, of course, is on every Sunday morning between 10 and 12, brought to you by Akira Urgent Care. And who could forget the mighty huddle Wednesday nights between 6 and 7. That's another Friday afternoon for us. I'm a tad parched. I don't know about you boys. It's beer o'clock here. But as a wise man once said, stick a fork in us, we're done.